You probably don't usually think of cruiser-style e-bikes as high-tech or cutting-edge, but this bike might change your mind. I'm here with the Blix Sol X, which is loaded with a ton of cool features, including an auto assist setting, turn signals, app connectivity, and more. Blix definitely packed way more into this bike than the average beach cruiser, so was it also above average in terms of its performance? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report, and thanks for tuning in. My name's John, and I'll be your host today. If you haven't been here before, we've built our reputation on having the most comprehensive e-bike reviews on the internet that include performance data from our series of 4 standardized tests, and we use that data to compare every bike with similar models we've tested. If you're shopping for an e-bike, we think you'll like what we have in store, so please be sure you're subscribed to our channel so you can find your way back again later. And if we are able to help guide you toward a bike you like, please do us a favor and use our affiliate link in the video description when you make a purchase, as doing so helps support us without increasing your cost. Before we get into our test sections and look at how the Sol X performed, let's start off by talking about a few of the things that stood out to me the most about the bike during my testing. First, I noticed that it pedaled a lot like a non-electric bike, just faster and easier, and that's because it is a torque sensor, and this type of sensor allows the motor to give you more power when you pedal harder. Most of the time, this bike felt really relaxed and approachable, but with a 750 watt rear hub motor, there was a lot of power there if I wanted to ride fast or needed to pedal uphill. All I had to do was just put more pressure on the pedals. Second, we've tested quite a few beach cruisers that were fairly big and heavy, but the Sol X is on the more manageable side at 61 pounds, including a 7-pound battery. This makes it pretty easy to move around, but it also plays into how the bike rides. With most of its weight on the back end, as well as its relatively minimalistic frame and 26-inch wheels, this bike felt surprisingly nimble for a cruiser, and I really liked its quick steering and its overall lively feel. Finally, I want to go into more detail about all those cool features I mentioned in the intro, as they really do give the Sol X a super high-tech feel. Starting off, there's an electronic shifting system that's responsive and crisp. It's operated by the shift levers on the bike's control panel on the left handlebar. This control panel also turns the bike on and off and switches between 4 pedal assist settings, including the auto assist mode that I mentioned, which can adjust the bike's power level automatically based on how you pedal. The left handlebar has a module with switches for the high and low beam headlights, as well as the turn signals, and also a button for an electronic horn. And then the Sol X pairs with the Blix Connect app, which gives you the ability to change the bike's speed, track ride data, and play with some experimental features that we'll talk a little bit more about later on. Running through the rest of the bike's specs, Blix paired the Sol X's 750 watt motor with a removable external 48 volt, 614.4 watt hour battery that sits behind the C-tube. The drivetrain is an 8-speed from Microshift that includes a 46-tooth chainring, a 13 to 32-tooth cassette, and a KMC chain covered by a chain guard. For brakes, there's a custom Blix branded hydraulic disc system with 2 piston calipers and 180mm rotors. The Sol's saddle is also custom, and then the bike's tires are 26 by 2.4 inch street tires made by Innova, and those are covered by front and rear plastic fenders. There's also a cargo rack over the rear wheel with a weight capacity of 59.5 pounds, and that includes an integrated tail light, brake light, and the turn signals that I mentioned earlier. And then up in the cockpit, there's an adjustable stem with a set of 660mm wide cruiser-style handlebars with ergonomic rubber grips. I talked about nearly everything up here already, but there's a half-twist throttle on the right handlebar next to that big control module, and then there's a centrally mounted custom color display. To wrap things up, the bike has a 400-pound total payload capacity with up to 318 pounds for the rider. It's UL 2849 certified. It ships as a Class 2 e-bike with throttle and pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour, but it can be adjusted to a Class 3 with pedal assist up to 28. And it's available in 4 color options. This one is called Seafoam, but there's also New Cream, Slate Gray, and Sky Blue. That should cover everything though, so let's see how the bike did when we tested its brakes, its speed, its range, and its hill climbing ability. Starting off with our brake test, we measured the Sol X's stopping ability by pedaling up to 20 miles per hour, applying the brakes at a marked line, and then seeing how far the bike traveled before stopping completely. After 3 of these tests, we calculated the bike's average stopping distance to be 19 feet and 10 inches, which is just over 2 feet better than the cruiser category average of 21 feet and 11 inches at the time of filming. Overall weight, weight distribution, and tire size are all factors that influence braking performance, but the Sol X's custom brake system seemed to be the biggest distinguishing factor when compared to similar cruisers we've tested. The brake levers themselves felt a little soft, but the system had great bite and good modulation, plus it uses thicker than average rotors. So most hydraulic systems we've tested used 1.8 millimeter rotors, but the Sol X had 2.3 millimeter rotors, making them better at dispersing heat and slowing the bike down. The placement of the battery behind the seat tube may have also played a part as well. In my time on the bike, I noticed that it felt really stable when braking, and it didn't deviate much at all from its line of travel. So between that and its numbers in this test, I'm happy to say it did great, and we give it an enthusiastic 2 thumbs up. Next up is our speed test, where I took the Sol X out to our local shared use paths to see how fast it was in each of its pedal assist settings. I tested the bike first in Class 2 mode, then did the same thing in Class 3 mode, and finally I tested the throttle to see how quickly it could get up to speed. Let's take a look at how each of these tests went, and then I'll see you back here to talk more about the results. All right, we are here for a Class 2 speed test on the Sol X. So we are starting things off with no pedal assist, and I'm going, let's see, kind of between 12 and 12.5 miles per hour with a, I'd say, moderate level of effort here. Pretty comfortable. Let's go ahead and go up into the pedal assist settings. So there are 4 on this bike. We're going to skip the first one. That's the auto mode. We'll talk more about that one later, but basically that one shifts between the power levels of the other 3 standard settings, of which eco mode is the lowest. So let's shift up. All right, and let's see. Very nice amount of power here. It's subtle, but it's helpful. You know, pedaling is easier. Very relaxed, honestly. Feels very smooth, very responsive, very natural. If I didn't know I was on an e-bike, I wouldn't really know it. So going around 15.5 here, very comfortably. Let's go ahead and go up into tour mode, and I will shift up again. All right. I'd say a pretty subtle difference in power. Like, it feels pretty much the same, but obviously we're going faster here. So up to around 17.5 miles per hour with the same level of effort. Maybe a little higher depending on the path. But okay, let's go ahead and finish things off in turbo mode, and we'll shift up again. All right, we are up to kind of around 19.5, maybe inching up towards 20, which is the Class 2 limit. So okay, yeah, that feels great. Still feels very natural, pedaling, still engaged with the drivetrain. Everything feels really nice. So let's turn around, we'll do the Class 3 test, and then check out the throttle. All right, and we are back here for a Class 3 speed test on the Sol X. Starting off kind of in that same range, right around 12 miles per hour with no pedal assist. Maybe a little above depending on the path, but let's go ahead and go up to eco mode. All right, so, a fairly subtle but helpful boost in this setting. Go ahead and shift up. We are up to around 15.5 again here, very comfortably. Again, trying to maintain that sort of same level of effort. So yeah, 15.5. Let's go up to tour mode. Go ahead and shift up again. All right, up to right around 17.5 miles per hour. Still feels really natural here. All right, and then we'll finish things off in turbo mode. Shift up, I think 2 gears. Wow, definitely feel the power here. We're over 20 miles an hour, pretty comfortably. Still climbing a little bit, but I think we're gonna land, yeah, maybe 22 and a half, something like that. Again, with that consistent level of effort. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. And then let's just see what happens when I give it a little bit more. All right, we're definitely still picking up here. We are up to 26. Definitely pedaling a little bit faster here, a little bit harder, but 27 and a half. And kind of just under that 28 mile per hour limit. But honestly, that feels really good. So let's call it there and go check out the throttle. All right, and then to wrap up this section, we will do a throttle acceleration test to see how quickly the bike can get up to top speed. So it seems like that's gonna be maybe 19 and a half, 19.6, something like that. So we'll just see where we land. Let's start in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, nice gradual build and acceleration there. I like that on this style of bike. Picking up nice and smoothly, 18, 19, 19.9 looks like about the max. Okay. Well, we'll call it there and let's head back to the studio. To recap my results from the pedal tests, I started off with only my own leg power at an average of 12.2 miles per hour. In the Class 2 test, I reached 15.4 miles per hour in Eco, 17.6 miles per hour in Tour, and 19.9 miles per hour in Turbo. In the Class 3 test, my results were identical in Eco and Tour, with speeds of 15.4 and 17.6 miles per hour respectively. With the same level of effort, I reached 22.5 miles per hour in turbo mode, but with a bit of extra leg work, I got up to 27.7 miles per hour. Now, when graphing our speed test data, we usually hope to see an angled line with consistent increases in speed between each pedal assist setting, and the Sol X looked very good in its Class 2 mode test. We hoped for more differentiation in the Class 3 test, with higher speeds across the board, instead of just in turbo mode, but overall the bike felt really good. I think Eco mode is best for when you want to maximize your range, ride slower, or get in a bit of a workout. Tour mode seemed best for general riding, and also a balance between motor efficiency and speed, while turbo mode was best suited for hills and reaching those faster Class 3 speeds above 20 miles per hour. In the throttle test, I think the Sol X did a great job of feeling controlled, but also fun. I like that its acceleration picked up gradually at first, but as we'll see later in the hill test, it still has plenty of power behind it. All in all, this bike did a solid job here, even if there might be a little room for improvement in its Class 3 settings. Next, we tested the Sol X's range in a series of 2 tests. In the first, we pedaled the bike in turbo mode until its battery ran out of juice to find its minimum range, and then we recharged the battery once it was empty and hit the bike paths one more time using Eco mode so we could get its maximum range. All told, our bracket of results was 38.1 and 85.7 miles, both of which I think look great on their own, but those numbers look even better when compared to the cruiser category average. Right now, the beach cruiser e-bikes we've tested average 26.4 and 54 miles in their range tests, which gives the Sol X a nearly 12-mile lead in turbo mode and a nearly 32-mile lead in the Eco mode test. At the time of filming, this is the longest distance a cruiser-style e-bike has covered in our testing, so we give Blix some serious kudos for what the Sol X is capable of. There are a couple of big things that seem to play into this bike's success. So first, its 614 watt-hour battery is a bit larger than average for the category. 584 watt-hours is currently the middle of the road based on those other bikes we tested. But also, most of those other cruisers had cadence sensors instead of torque sensors, which are usually less efficient. Where those bikes put out a constant flow of power, the Sol X's motor output can fluctuate, which means it can stretch out its charge over a greater number of miles. We noticed the bike's battery readout could be fairly inconsistent during our testing, which made it a little tough to estimate its remaining range. I also want to point out that the pedal assist system stopped functioning at 11% instead of somewhere closer to 0, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. We'd prefer a bit more of a reliable charge reading and slightly more intuitive programming for when the bike reaches a low charge level. When it comes to our test results though, do keep in mind that we use the bike's standard Class 2 settings, so if you have it set to Class 3 mode and you're riding above 20 miles per hour, you'll likely burn through battery charge faster. But that aside, we expect that you'd get at least a couple of round-trip commutes in before needing to recharge, depending on how far you have to ride. And if you're using this bike for shorter leisure trips, you should get in a bunch of rides before you need to plug back in. Next, let's find out how the Sol X did in our hill test. Our rider for this test is Justin, and he rode the bike up our test hill, which is called Hellhole Trail, both with its throttle and its highest level of pedal assist. To give you an idea of how difficult the hill is, it has a 12% grade over a third of a mile of paved path. Let's go see how the test went. Justin can give you some thoughts along the way, and then we can analyze the results back here.
We are out on Hellhole doing the throttle test on the Blix Sol. This is a bike that it's super comfortable, kind of laid back beach cruiser. We're gonna see how it does. So far, it feels pretty decent. We're at 13.8, 13.7, 12.21, 11.6, 11.4, 11.1, 10.5, 4, 10.2, 10.1. So yeah, it looks like it bottoms out right about 10.2 miles an hour, 10.1 miles per hour. Feels decently peppy, especially for a beach cruiser. Motor sounds pretty nice. I'll let you listen to it through here. So yeah, bottomed out about 10.9 through there. You can hear the motor. I'd say it's a little quieter. At least has a lower frequency than average, so I really do like that. I prefer lower frequencies personally. And the overall power feels really nice. Like, you're not gonna have any problem climbing a hill with throttle on this thing. We'll go to the tape and check the results, but so far I'm super happy. Okay, we're back out now doing the pedal test at Hellhole with the Blix Sol. And you know, side note, I really like this electronic shifting. It's pretty slick. So far it's doing pretty decent. Right about 11, 12 miles per hour hitting this first section on the hill, down to 11.21, downshift really quick, 9.8, 9.6. Had a slight pause when I downshifted. Some motors do that to kind of protect your gearing and the cassette. Motor again sounds really quiet and nice, so I'll let you listen to that again through this climb. I'm going to downshift and then right after. So yeah, you're probably not hearing that motor very much. It's definitely quieter when I'm pedaling than throttle. And really the power output feels decent, but it kind of does, you know, it's a laid back cruiser and it kind of wants me to pedal that way instead of really kind of crank it really hard. So it's not gonna be the fastest up this hill, but you can definitely get up it if you want to pedal, and you don't have to pedal that hard. So we'll go to the tape and we'll check the results.
So as you could see, the Sol X conquered Hellhole in both tests, which isn't something we can say about all beach cruisers we've tested. Many had less powerful motors that simply weren't up to the task. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's get back to the Sol's results. Justin clocked in a throttle time of 1 minute and 19 seconds in the throttle test with an average speed of 13.7 miles per hour. His pedal test was a little slower with a time of 1 minute and 32 seconds and an average of 11.8 miles per hour. Now, both of these results are great when compared to other beach cruisers we've tested. Those bikes averaged 2 minutes and 4 seconds in the throttle test, making the Sol X 45 seconds faster. The cruiser average when pedaling is 1 minute and 42 seconds, so the Sol was 10 seconds faster in that portion of the test. This bike's results aren't all that surprising considering that it has a 750 watt motor versus the less powerful 500 watt or 350 watt motors we've seen more commonly on this style of bike. That's the reason I said that not all cruisers we've tested were able to make it up Hellhole, but again, this one didn't have any such trouble. It is fairly uncommon for the pedal test result to be slower than the throttle time, but we attribute that both to the Sol X's torque sensor and the fact that the bike's programming and power output favor a more natural feel. I tested the Sol X at our secondary location called Pilot Hill, and while I agree with Justin about this bike not being a hill charger, it definitely made the job of climbing both possible and infinitely more enjoyable, so I give it 2 thumbs up. Bottom line, you can rely on the throttle if you want an effort-free experience, but even if you choose to pedal uphill, you won't have to work very hard. In this ride quality section, we'll talk about all the things that affect how the Sol X feels to ride. Let's head back out to the paths to talk about some of the basic elements, but then we can go a bit deeper once we get back here.
All right, so let's talk about ride quality here on the Sol X, this being a cruiser commuter hybrid e-bike. So, it has pretty stretched out geometry, with a long wheelbase there, a very upright riding position, and then of course these big swept back cruiser style handlebars. So the bike is recommended to fit riders from 5'1" up to 6'2". So I am 5'11", so I'm on the top end of that range, but definitely feels right for me where I'm at here. There's about 8 inches of adjustment in saddle height, and then there's also an adjustable stem, so that allows you to raise and lower the handlebar height a little bit, adjust the reach a little bit, as long as you have some Allen wrenches to loosen that up. There is no suspension on this bike, but I gotta say, between the saddle and the tires, the shock absorption is pretty solid. I'm riding over these bumps that are basically sealed over cracks in the pavement here, and some bikes you definitely feel those, and this one, I think the saddle in particular is doing a lot of work, but the tires are also helping. Those are 26 by 2.4 with a street tread pattern, so that wheel size gives you a nice balance between quick acceleration, good steering, good traction, and then also some appreciated stability. And then we also have the 750 watt rear hub motor with a torque sensor that we've talked about, very natural ride experience. So right now, something else that I want to talk about is the auto pedal assist setting. That's what we are riding around in right now. We kind of skipped over that in the speed test section just because the power output in the setting can fluctuate depending on your terrain and how much pressure you're putting on the pedals. So it's kind of a supplement to what the torque sensor's already doing. There's also an automatic shifting feature that's kind of in beta testing right now. Been trying to dial that in a little bit here with mixed success, I'd say. So right now I'm riding around in 6th gear, trying to get it to downshift. So I'm just gonna kind of really relax on the pedals and see if that will happen here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we went down to 5th gear. So let's pick it back up. Okay, so then it went down to 4th. And as we pick up some speed, should shift up again. There we go, back up to 5, back up 6. Nice, okay, yeah. So, I'd say that feature isn't perfect, but it is functioning. It's, I'd say maybe a little bit delayed, but our contact at Blix said that the feature will receive updates every 6 months based on rider usage. And as they sort of dial that in, we hope to see that get better and better. But very cool feature, as is the automatic shifting. Of course, the turn signals, the lights, high beam, low beam, lots of cool features on this bike that I think separate it from a lot of other similar bikes out there. But let's head back to the studio now and talk a little bit more.
So one of the hallmarks of cruiser style bikes is an extremely comfortable and relaxed ride, and that's definitely present here. I really like the Sol X's saddle as well as its upright riding position. This bike is fairly unique for its style though, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First, it does encourage an active pedaling experience with its torque sensor, but it also can be pretty peppy and powerful if you want it to be with its 750 watt motor. And then second, there's all the cool tech features that the Sol X includes, most of which are uncommon on any style of e-bike. To touch back on the bike's auto pedal assist setting and the automatic shifting feature, I think these are especially cool, and I'm stoked to see what happens when the shifting is dialed in even more. As it is, I think it's the most practical for relatively flat areas and small hills. When I tested it on some larger ones, it could be a bit jarring when the system shifted unexpectedly since it was reacting to my pedaling and I couldn't really predict when it would shift. Overall though, it did function pretty well, and I think a lot of folks will like that you can just sort of hop on and ride. This does bring me to a fairly large point of critique that came up in our testing. It's possible that we got a lemon, but even after replacing some components on the bike, we ran into problems after adjusting the bike speed settings. Sometimes the motor's power output would change, so I had to pedal really hard to get to 25 miles per hour, and other times the throttle and pedal assist speeds would exceed the limit that I set them to. I'm sure there's a lot of complexity in getting the app, the motor, and the electronic shifting system to all communicate properly, but hopefully some updates can correct these problems in the future. Otherwise, I was really happy to see that Blix included turn signals and both a high and low beam headlight for safety. The big control module on the right handlebar and the electronic shifting system added a small layer of complexity, but overall I found the bike very easy to use and well worth the learning curve. Before we finish things up though, let's head back out on the bike one more time to talk about the Blix Connect app.
All right, so I wanted to go ahead and walk you guys through the Blix Connect app. Right now we are on the home, the sort of landing page here. Top left is where the name of the bike is. You can change that if you want. There's also an image of the bike that should pop up there. So you have a charge meter, which shows the current battery percentage, and then an estimated range based on that. This blue button you can use to change the pedal assist setting if you don't want to use the button on the control panel on the handlebar there. And then the sort of toolbox area down here is where the meat and potatoes of the app are, but I will show you the other two panels real quick. So on the far right, we have a settings panel, which is mostly like administrative stuff, but you can change your language in there if you need to. And then the middle panel, the ride panel, is where your sort of ride data is. So a lot of similar things to what you have on the bike's display. You have a speedometer, you have your current battery charge, you have an estimated range again based on that, your trip distance and time, average speed, a cadence meter, but you also have a power meter for both yourself and the bike. And I really like that personally. As you pedal, that sort of central white circle will shift depending on whether you're putting in more power or the motor is. And then there's also a dark mode if you prefer that. But if we go back to that home screen, and let's dive into the toolbox here. So e-bike info is where you go for all the firmware status stuff, where you can get over-the-air updates with this blue button if there are any. Right now we are up to date. You can also unpair from the bike there as well. Over at assist setting, so this is where you can change the bike's speed limit. Now we were told that on the consumer side there will be the option for either class 2 or class 3. The setup that we have right now allows you to go basically anywhere between 28 and 8 miles per hour. So let's just go back to 20, and if you hit confirm, there's a beep to show that synced. And then we have your walk mode, and then we also have a couple of options for when you hit low battery charge. You can keep it in rally mode, which prioritizes power, or go to range mode, which is going to sort of stretch that charge out a little bit more. And then over here in the E-Shift panel, this is where that sort of optional beta mode is for the auto pedal assist setting. So right now it's set to manual shift. But if you go in here and choose the auto shift mode, which is again currently in beta testing, then you can adjust how the system shifts based on the amount of power that's being put in by you, and then also the cadence that you want. So there's a table here in the recommended settings panel that can kind of help you out with that. I found that somewhere in here, 90 watts, 80 RPMs works pretty well. And then this also keeps track of how many times you've shifted gears, which that's more than I would expect. Everything else, accessibility, pretty straightforward. You have your units there, your auto power off. You can either turn that on and off or change the amount of time. And then you can, if you don't want to hear beeps every time that you switch pedal assist, you can deactivate that as well there. But then support, if you need to contact Blix, that will just allow you to email them directly. Otherwise, that's really about it. Pretty straightforward app, but pretty functional, and definitely ties in nicely with all the tech in this bike. So let's go ahead and bounce back to the studio and wrap things up.
I've had the pleasure of reviewing a handful of Blix's e-bikes at this point, with the most recent being the brand's updated folding e-bike, the Vika X. Both the Sol X and the Vika share all of the electronic shifting and technology features that we covered in this review, and I'm looking forward to seeing the same systems on all of Blix's bikes in the future. This brand's bikes feel well made, I think they look great, and as we've seen with the Sol X in this video, they perform really well too. This bike proved to have good programming overall in our speed test, as well as great stopping power in our brake test, and very respectable climbing power in our hill test. I think the range test is where it truly shined though, with the ability to cover a seriously impressive distance on a single charge. Of course, this bike isn't perfect, and we'd like Blix to implement a more reliable battery charge readout in the future, as well as pushing out a firmware update to address the speed limitation concerns I mentioned earlier. But otherwise, I would definitely recommend this bike to anyone looking for a comfortable, nimble, and high-tech cruiser. I think it's extremely well suited to daily use for the ride to work or school, but I think you'll also be very happy if you just want something to take out for leisure rides in the evenings. If you'd like to take a closer look at the Sol X, please take a look at the 2 links we have in the video description down below. One goes to our written review, while the other will take you to Blix's website. And just as a reminder, please use that second link if you decide to make a purchase. Be sure to let us know what you think of this bike down in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next review. Thanks for taking a ride with me today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this was the Blix Sol X.